This video is about how to modify and replace the pump in your Harbor Freight motorcycle lift table. My particular table I've had for quite a long time. It's made by Central Hydraulics. 91764 is the part number. The newer tables made by Pittsburgh are slightly different, so if you have a Pittsburgh table and you want to do this, you're going to have to look into and make sure that the setup is going to be the same. My table had died. The pump decided it had lifted its last bike. Harbor Freight doesn't sell a replacement part for it, so I started looking around. Found some videos on YouTube where guys had modified jacks that are meant to be pumped vertical, you know, to lift cars up into the table. There was a lot of fabrication involved, and oftentimes those vertical pumps don't like to work horizontally. I ended up finding a website, RedLine stands, link right there, and they had a direct fit replacement for this table. In checking out their site, they also had an air-over hydraulic pump, not a direct fit and would require some fabrication to the table. They did offer one image that was apparently from a customer showing his modification. I decided to buy the pump as it would be a nice upgrade over over my 70-something pumps it would take me to get the table to the top. So I ordered the kit, it came in, and this video is about my journey into installing this and getting my table back into working condition. Before I had decided to actually make a video about how to do this, I had already started taking the table apart. Now, if you're the kind of person that's going to get into a project like this, I do not have to show you how to take the table apart. You'll need to remove this triangular piece. This is what the hydraulic piston pushes against to lift the table up. This guy right here, this little receiver, is where the shaft of the pump sits, but the new pump is actually a little longer, about an inch or so, so you're going to have to cut this off, and we're going to cut out a channel and push it back in there and then re-weld it. Here is my new pump from RedLine, and you can see it's the pump assembly and this mounting bracket. One of the other reasons I liked this particular pump was because it also has the manual pump as well as the air over hydraulic. So if something were to happen with my air compressor, I could still pump the table up. One thing that was a little disappointing was there's no mounting hardware. There's 4 threaded holes here. These are 6mm, by the way, so you will need to get some hardware to mount this. One thing I knew about was that this mount was hollow versus the original pump. Here's the old one. This is the part that sits in the table. This is 25mm. I wasn't sure what size this was, and this was one of the things that RedLine couldn't tell me, and I had to wait for it to show up today. So I measured it. It is indeed, it's like 25 point something or other, and it's going to actually work out fine. So I ordered a 25mm rotary shaft from Grainger. Grainger item number 2HXT6. The interior of the new mount, I think, is about 95mm, and the length of the pin, or I should say the depth of the mounting hole in the table is about 40mm. So this 400mm rod will be just enough to make 2 pins to mount. Another strange, unfortunate thing I just discovered was that the mount holes that are drilled and tapped into this base are not actually very deep. The threads don't go very deep at all. I have some 6mm hardware. It was 25mm long, and it just barely made it with a lock washer and washer to get it on there tight. Anything longer than that would have just bottomed out. So I thought that was kind of strange. Another thing to note is that the pump is going to go in one certain position. If you notice the angle here of both the foot pump and the release. I don't know if I'm really capturing this very well, but at any rate, this is the position that it's going to fit in the table. Now, I haven't actually gotten my rod from Granger yet, so I'm just going to use a couple of sockets that are going to help me keep it in place while I make the desired measurements, so I can then cut down that V-plate. I got this off. It's pretty hot, so, and I don't have a pair of gloves near me. So the next thing to do is I'm going to clean up the old weld, and I measured it, and we've got originally from the edge here, and I just kind of laying it against the pipe. It was 9 7/8. I got to drop it back about an inch. So once I clean it up, I'm going to get it marked and cut this next section out. So I notched it out, and this guy fits in there. So this actually puts this edge at 8 3/4, so I'm a little bit farther, but that's okay. All right, I notched it down even more. I might have overachieved a little bit, but that's all right, I think. All right. I think I might actually have this damn near perfect. Oh yeah. I think I'm pretty safe to say that I can clean all this up a little bit and tack it in place. So it looks pretty good. It's actually, nothing's too tight. I think we're good. I'm going to go ahead and weld this guy on up. All right, got it all welded up, and I hit it with some black spray paint. When I did take it out, there's a set screw here that keeps it in line with this little notch right here. That had stripped out when I was taking it apart, so I also welded an 8mm nut on here. And I'm going to put this all back together. Another thing I'm going to do, I'm actually going to take this whole part out because when it comes time to actually install this thing is just going to be in the way, and it actually will come right out, or should come right out. There's just these little steel sleeves you can knock out. And, oh. In getting ready to connect all the manual controls, I've kind of run into a problem. The controls line up basically opposite. So this is the control for, that's the release. It's not really that big of a deal. I can cut these off, move them over. So I did have to go and cut these tabs off and move them over here and as well on the pump side. Pretty simple, just got them lined up, measured, marked, cut them off, re-welded, and did a crappy paint job. It's finally here. I'm sure by now you figured out that I'm making this video as the modification progresses. The rod that I ordered from Grainger, the 25mm steel rod, took forever to show up. And guess what? This isn't from Grainger. If you've had to deal with Grainger in the past, you know how awful they can be. I was supposed to receive the rod on a Friday, and they lost it. Well, they didn't lose it. UPS lost it in transit to my local Grainger. But to Grainger's credit, they threw a steel rod in a cardboard box with no packing, so it just ripped itself out. And they couldn't find it, so Grainger reordered it, and they lost it again. So it is now on Tuesday. I ordered this from McMaster-Carr. There's no McMaster-Carr where I live, so I had to eat the shipping. But look, packing material. Who knew? And here it is. Oh boy, this is a big boy. Fits perfect. Hey, now I gotta cut it. So, as I mentioned earlier, I think I said something about this is 90-something millimeters. And sometimes my digital calipers are not the greatest. This is, I don't know, 95 millimeters. So I've got 95 millimeters here. I've got 40 millimeters here. Interestingly enough, if we measure the depth here, we get 60 millimeters. So we've got a range of length to play with here, so we don't have to be too terribly precise, since the original pump didn't fit all the way into the tube. So yeah. Alright, first one done. I'm going to put this on a bench grinder, and I'm just going to camphor. This was pretty good, but I'm going to definitely kind of smooth that edge out a little bit. Got our rods cut. There is also there's a little hole right here, 6 millimeter. Just for good measure, I'm gonna coat these guys in some grease. go. Yes. Super easy. Right, we got the table all back together. Last is, there's a threaded hole right here. I'm going to put a little retaining bolt in it. This is 8mm. The last thing to do is test the air system, and we're all good to go. I opted to not buy the air control valve from RedLine. That was about 50 bucks. Instead, I went on Amazon and I found this cool little pedal for 20 bucks, and I got my hoses all set up so I can disconnect it when I'm not using the table. I kind of pondered about what to do here, but I ended up putting a quick connect fitting in just in case I ever wanted to, I had to move the table farther and I wanted to completely disassemble this and not have some part dangling off the table. Success. We got everything reassembled. Everything that needs Loctite's got Loctite. I got the spring back on. We're all set to go. I got my fancy air pedal set up. Here we go. Much success. It works. Now all I've got to do is put it back on the floor, clean up this workspace, and figure out how I'm going to get this heavy tabletop back on all by myself. Oh, that didn't work. Success! That wasn't hard at all. Huh. All right. A little slow on the down, huh? Certainly slower than the old pump. Oh, man. What is? Oh. I guess I get to test the manual pump. There we go. It is a little slower than the original pump.
I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it useful. And, you know, thumbs up or whatever the kids are supposed to do these days. Thanks.